Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with the second video of the day. It's a bit later in the evening and RJ's sleeping, so no camera, but I already did a camera vid earlier, so you want to see my dusty old mug, you can always watch the other video. But anyway, I just wanted to briefly go over these panels that Memology 101 has shared a few times now from Immortal Hulk issue 11, right? So it seems to be that there's this conversation. Let's see if it'll load. Seems to be this conversation going on between this lady. I don't know who she is. She doesn't look like any black character that I'm aware of in Marvel's works, right? But she's talking to the Hulk, right? And she's sort of griping about how her anger is never allowed to be expressed. So I thought I would sort of go over this, sort of give my feelings on it. If you've seen my other videos about comics, you'll probably have an idea about how I feel about this, but let me go over it anyway. Right, so you have Hulk saying, "You're not the first to want to climb into some gamma machine either. People see me, they imagine what it's like to be me." Okay, fair enough. And then she goes, "Yeah, I can't imagine it at all. What it must be like to feel that rage, to be able to feel that rage, to be allowed to feel it." Now, here's the thing. With somebody who has a pretty bad temper and has always related more to the angry characters like Wolverine, um, feeling deep rage is not fun, especially as you get older and it starts to impact not just your emotional health, but also your physical health. It's very draining. It can be incredibly scary. And the thing about rage is that, like fire, which is something that it's often used to sort of represent or illustrate rage and anger, right? A perfect example is Zuko, right? From Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? He's the angry, angsty boy, and he is the resident firebender. Well, there's several firebenders, right? But of Team Aang, right? He's the one who teaches Aang firebending, right? It's even expressed in that work that the firebenders of the Fire Nation in general are taught to use their anger and use their negative feelings to fuel their literal inner fire, which then, of course, they then bring into the world through their firebending, right? So yeah, anger is not fun, right? Anger can be a positive and a negative. It's neither good nor bad. It simply is. The thing is that anger tends to be incredibly destructive because humans are not good at managing anger. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. The only female character that I can think of off the top of my head who could say this and like get away with it is like two female, well, maybe not two female characters, but two types, let's say. The first one is Storm, right? It was established a long time ago, both in the comics back in the 80s. In fact, there were like two issues where she gets so angry that she goes like Rogue Storm, right? And she basically becomes a force of nature onto itself. As if being Mother Nature incarnate doesn't make you a force of nature enough, right? But it was established in the comics years, decades ago. It was even established in the cartoon in the early 90s that if Storm loses control of her emotions, that can actually be quite damaging because her emotions directly impact the weather, right? If she's feeling good, right, weather will be calm and serene, right? If she's angry, if she's upset, if she's emotional, the weather's gonna go crazy, right? Hence why her name is Storm, right? Hence why usually when it's either in the comics or the TV shows or the films or whatever, right, she's shown causing a literal storm, right? Thunder, lightning, rain, right? Because damn nature, you scary. She's basically the embodiment of that phrase. So I understand a character like Storm saying something like this, right? That she really can't allow herself to feel her rage or her more passionate emotions because of how they would impact the weather and impact her as a person, right? So I get it from her. And I even understand it from the powerful psychic female characters like Jean Grey or Emma Frost or Rachel Grey, in particular Jean Grey, right? Because the Phoenix came to possess her. Now, she's not the first person to be possessed by the Phoenix, but let's be honest, especially in pop culture, she's the most famous vessel for the Phoenix, right? And the Phoenix became the Dark Phoenix because it began to sort of become addicted and become drunk on the rush of passionate and oftentimes negative emotions, right? And that's why she becomes, Dark Phoenix, and she's part of the Hellfire Club, and this whole crazy thing that decades later Hollywood still can't make a decent adaptation of, right? So, but I understand characters like that saying that, right? Characters whose powers are uh, related to their emotions, or their emotions can impact their powers, and it can affect something outside of them, like the weather, or it can corrupt them, like it did to Jean Grey and the Phoenix Force. I get it from them, but from this lady, no, I don't understand. Talking about how you can't imagine, I should say, what it's like to feel that rage, right? Well, here's the thing, honey. If you can't imagine it, you can talk to Hulk. You can talk to Wolverine. You can talk to the characters who are sort of slaves to their anger at times. Or you can talk to Storm and Jean Grey, right? People who have to keep a tight lid on their emotions, because if they don't, things are going to go to hell real fast. So if you can't imagine it, you can always do this thing called have a conversation. But continuing. And then she says, your anger, it's indulged, even respected. Mine is dismissed if I'm lucky. First of all, Hulk's anger causes people to fear him, and he fears it himself, right? I will admit, I'm not super knowledgeable on Hulk stories, but I know that much, right? A constant theme with him is this whole, Jekyll and Hyde type of thing with his powers, right? Unlike, say, Jen, when she becomes She Hulk, right? Bruce has to live in fear of his powers, right? Because of the fact that not only does he completely just become a rage monster who can even beat Wolverine, right? Although I still get salty about that. But not only does he become a rage monster, right? But he loses all of his intelligence, right? So his intelligence comes down and he has no control of his emotions, right? That's a recipe for disaster. So I don't really see where his anger is indulged or respected. It's feared. He fears it, other people fear it because of the great potential for destruction. As I've seen some people online point out, the government has tried more than once to kill him, right? And sometimes they keep him around because, if they can sort of restrain him or somehow control him, they can use his Hulk form to their advantage. But otherwise, yeah, it's like, people generally don't want to be in his path because, like Storm, when she gets pissed off and she cuts loose emotionally, right? Hulk is a force of nature. He's a force of nature that is very, very, very difficult to tame and restrain. He is a source of fear, both for Bruce and for others. So for her to talk about how, his anger is indulged and respected, and completely disregard, A, how he became the Hulk, right, because of the child abuse he endured, right? Because that's what the Hulk is, right? It's the physical manifestation and expression of his deep-seated anger toward his father, right, and the abuse that his father enacted against him and against his mother, right? And Bruce always felt guilty because he was just physically too weak to, do anything about it, right? So you're basically telling a child abuse victim, and just some guy brought this up, right? That she's telling a child abuse victim that, oh, his pain, his anger, his rage that he constantly lives in fear of, right, is indulged and respected. Whereas compared to hers is dismissed if she's lucky. Except she's wrong. Not only is she being incredibly disrespectful toward Bruce, she's wrong. Black anger and black rage has been all the rage ever since the death of George Floyd last year. Well, I really should say the murder, but right, murder, death, however you look at it, of George Floyd last year, right? They've been using black anger, black rage, and justifying it to justify the riots and the destruction that the rioting has had on businesses and neighborhoods and the lives it has taken. Because let's not forget, David Dorn wasn't shot to death and murdered by a white person. He was shot to death and murdered by a black person who was looting a business, right? That's why he was out there, to protect his friend's business, and he never came home. And sadly, it was a black person who took his life, right? Or you think about the senseless death of 5-year-old Cannon Hinnant, right? Little white kid, right? He was murdered unjustly. There was no justification for the murder of a 5-year-old, right? But he was murdered, shot to death by a black guy, right? Still don't know why yet, why the guy did it, but a black man killed him. And yet, you seldom ever hear about these stories anymore because the perpetrators were African American. And it's not good from a media perspective, right, to in any way critique the black community because then it's seen as a critique of, oh, black people can't be angry. Oh, black people can't be incensed. Oh, you don't think black lives matter? No, black lives do matter, but if they're gonna matter, then we as black people have to be the first ones to value not just our own lives, but the lives of others. Right, but that's a video for another day that I've made plenty of videos about, especially last summer. But I bring all this up just to highlight the fact that, black rage has been all the rage, right? And violence committed in the name of black rage has been all the rage. Yet whoever wrote this has the nerve to have this black woman, whoever the heck she is, say that her anger is dismissed. Oh no, honey. It's the exact opposite. Your anger is embraced. It is so embraced that it can be marketed by corporations. You are the furthest thing from dismissed right now. But anyway, continuing. And then, and here's, woo! This is, right, so then she goes on to tell the Hulk, right, Bruce Banner, that we live in a world of men, white, college-educated men like Bruce Banner, who just rant and scream and rage and smash things, and the world bends over backward to understand that, to reward it. Again, no, that's not how this works. First of all, from what I've read on the whole, when it comes to college and higher education, actually men are lagging behind women in this regard, number one. Number two, since she's going to bring up race, I'll bring up race too. She seems to forget that there was this biracial guy, half white, but people keep saying that he's black because of his brown skin. Well, he went to like 4 different colleges, Columbia University, very nice, big wig colleges. But the most famous one he went to is Harvard Law School, right? Harvard Law. This man ended up becoming an attorney. He even eventually went into politics. And guess what? He ran for president. And he won. He didn't just win once, he won twice. Guess who that man's name is? Guess. Mm, uh, Boss something Barry? Oh, Barack Obama. Right? How in the world do you write something like this when we had a black president for nearly a decade? Really mixed race president, but everyone wants to call him a black president because he's brown, right? How do you say this? How do you write this with a straight face? With a straight face. Like, how does this get to the editor? And then the editor goes, this is fine. Right? And not have Bruce in any way refute what she's saying. If she's gonna say this, then at the very least, he needs to actually, push back on it. That's something in general that I've seen lacking in a lot of comic stuff, right? There used to be in comics there would be two characters who would represent different viewpoints and they would, sort of battle it out through their words, right? You would see where each person's coming from. These days, I don't see that too often. I don't see viewpoints being challenged. It's just if a person of color or a woman or whomever, right, some person of some a minority group speaks, their words are depicted in the work as truth, right? And we're just supposed to go with it. And nobody's ever supposed to present a different viewpoint or a different opinion or challenge them or say that they're wrong or call them out or anything. And it is so annoying because, again, if you don't get differing viewpoints, how in the world do you learn anything? But anyway, then she goes on to talk about how, men like Bruce Banner, right? Privileged men. This is what it's really talking about, right? Male, white, college educated, right? Banners of genius scientists. She means privileged men who just rant and scream and rage and smash things. Well, here's the thing. Banner isn't exactly privileged because, again, he went through terrible, terrible, terrible child abuse. And here's the thing. His father was the man who ranted and screamed and raged and smashed things and terrorized a little boy and his mother to the point where he murdered that little boy's mother and left his son eternally scarred. Right? So, again, it's not as if Bruce was privileged to experience, that type of anger expressed toward him and then to have to live the rest of his life dealing with those type of feelings and those type of reactions and responses in himself, becoming a literal rage monster. Right? It's like when I see stuff online where people try to paint Bruce Wayne. I know I'm moving into DC now, right? But they'll try to paint Bruce Wayne as privileged because he's rich and all this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. He is privileged. But his privilege didn't save his parents, right? Privilege didn't save his parents. Privilege certainly didn't save his mental state, right? Having privilege is not always a protection from the harsh realities of the world. Being privileged does not protect you always from violence, right? Whether it be violence in your own home, as it was for Bruce Banner, whether it's the violence of the outside world, as it was for Bruce Wayne. Privilege may give you certain advantages, but it does not always provide you with certain protections, right? And in the end, it is what you do with it, it's how you respond that determines whether or not you are an eternal victim or whether you are a survivor. Right? Bruce Banner and Bruce Wayne are survivors because they decided to do more than just wallow in their pain and let it consume them. They decided to turn that outward and try to do something productive and positive, right? Take a tragedy and try to have something good grow from it, even if it does, of course, in their cases, right, sort of totally wreck their personal lives. But that's a story for another day, right? And then this woman has the gall to say that the world bends backwards to understand Bruce Banner's rage and to reward it. Except it doesn't. The world, and by this I mean the US government as depicted in comics, does not try to understand Bruce's rage or to reward his rage. They try to learn how to harness it and use it for themselves. The US government in the comics, right, or other type of organizations, right, seek to use Bruce Banner, to use his destructive potential for their own benefit. They're not trying to understand him. They're not trying to reward him, because for Bruce Banner, the reward would be to not turn into the Hulk anymore, to not be burdened with this destructive anger and rage, right? A reward for him would be similar to Wolverine, right? To have a calm heart, to have a normal life, right? To not have this, as Logan would put it, berserker rage, right, inside of them. But they are cursed with it. They are cursed to live with that anger and with that rage and to try to do something positive with it. But the government sure as hell isn't looking to reward Banner. The government isn't looking to reward anybody but the government. Understand that, right? So, what really frustrates me about these panels is, first of all, this isn't even anything new per se, right? Similar sentiments were expressed in a conversation between Jen and Bruce Banner, and I think Avengers 20, which was written by Jason Aaron, and we all know how I feel about Jason Aaron, right? They always have these female characters sort of, talk Bruce's ear off about their plights. I'm never allowed to be anything but fun. I'm never allowed to express my anger. While they show absolutely no concern for how disrespectful their complaints can come across to someone who has suffered a hell of a lot worse than they have, right? Jen's Hulk form, didn't turn her into a mindless monster, didn't play on her anger and her pain and her rage. She's always had control over it, right? And as I've mentioned in many videos, right, it became a power fantasy come to life under John Byrne when he decided to make the character more of an action comedy type thing. But neither Jen, at least as she's written now, nor this lady, whoever the heck she is, understand, nor do they care to understand the burden that a character like Bruce Banner has to live with. And all they want to do is just cry, 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 cry about how hard they have it, not understanding for 1 second how blessed they are to not be burdened with the anger and rage that he feels and that he has to constantly live in fear of. And perhaps it's because I'm a pretty mad person myself. But when I read stuff like this, I'm not gonna lie, it pisses me off. It pisses me the heck off that modern day Marvel would write something like this. I'm not surprised by it, but it is very annoying, right? Because they would say that, oh, Gene, this character is meant to represent you. In what way? Because we're both brown and female and have black hair? This chick doesn't represent me. She's nothing like me. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, I always felt that the character in Marvel and in general that always sort of I felt like was a reflection of myself or represented me or that I could see myself in was Wolverine, right? The nigh immortal, grumpy Canadian dude with the claws. That's who I feel. If there's ever a character who could represent me, it would be him, right? But as we've seen time and again, Marvel's not actually interested in creating characters that a reader can relate to, regardless of whether or not the reader and the character have certain demographic points in common. All they care about is basically crying into their comic book about how hard they have it, while they gripe to characters who actually are the product of pathos and pain and trauma, right? As just some guy said, right? This woman's complaining about anger and rage and how she can't explain it to a child abuse victim, right? If this happened in the real world, the person would be rightly, criticized for their insensitivity. But in a comic book, who cares? Who cares? It's not like they're real anyway. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all the next one. Have a good day and night wherever you are. Bye.